Right, I'm Fran from Health Watch here in Doncaster. We're doing Ask the Expert today. We're having a GP, Dr. Dean, on stage. Is going to have questions that have been sent in and live questions that come from the audience. And that's the plan of today. Hi, and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm here. I'm Fran. I'm from Health Watch. And we're going to be chatting with the doctor. The way that the day is going to work, well, the next hour or so, is we've had a lot of questions sent through to us. I've got them written down. We're going to start with the way that the system works. We're going to move on to how to get the best out of the system with your doctor. We're going to be looking at accessibility for everybody. Ending on how do we improve the outcomes so that we as patients get a better idea. And then we'll open the floor up to anything random, okay? He did say that nothing is off limits, okay? Right? We are happy to answer questions throughout. We'll pick it up. So if anybody wants to sort of stick their hand up and say anything, we will answer those questions en route and doing that. And yes, as I said, nothing is off limits. So this is the doctor who is brave enough or daft enough, okay, to sit on stage. So this is Dean.
Thank you, Fran. Lovely to see you all. My name is Dr. Dean Eggitt. Please call me Dean. I've never really got used to being called doctor, so Dean is fine. As Fran said, we've got about an hour and a half, just under. Nothing is off the table here. So this is your opportunity to ask anything about health, social care, the NHS. I've been doing this for quite a long time now, so I've got a broad range of understanding about it. And you can ask me anything, whether that's personal, about me, about being a doctor, what I get paid, anything you like, up to why does the system work the way it does. And I'm happy to address every single one of those questions. As Fran said, either I'm brave enough or stupid enough to be here. I don't mind either way, but you don't have to take it easy on me. So if you want to get something off your chest, feel free, and we will discuss it. Fran and I have planned out this conversation between us based upon the questions that you and people across Doncaster have already submitted. So we've got this hour and a half-ish sort of conversation, but there's going to be moments where you think, well, that doesn't make sense. I don't understand that, or I want to know more about that. Shout up, interject, because it's going to be a long time again before you get to see a doctor in this position. That pun wasn't even intended to be, but it was so good. Let's be honest, it's going to be a long time again until you ever get to see a doctor. So use the opportunity whilst you can. Do you want me to tell you a little bit more about my background and me? So I grew up in Scunthorpe, well actually Winston. I've not fallen far from the tree. I went to the University of Sheffield. I come from an extremely working class background. So medicine for me was my opportunity to climb the social ladder and be something very different, because my future really was going to be working in a local shop. I come from what would have been called a challenging family, so lots and lots of difficulties. So I have moved through the social ladders, and I understand different parts of society because I've lived in different parts of society. I work 3 days a week as a GP. Feel free to ask about that. And 2 days a week doing all sorts of bits and bobs. So I work full time, but 3 days a week as a GP. My special interests, I really, really enjoy heart problems because I've got my own heart problem. I have a metallic heart valve, and at some stage I expect that to cause me more problems. So I'm really interested in that. I enjoy diabetes, heart failure, but my big passion is healthcare systems. So I have a master's degree in global health policy, and I work towards improving healthcare systems so that patients can get the best out of the system. Hence why I have a broad interest.
Is that globally or locally?
All of the above, all of the above. So you may have seen me from the media. So I do a lot of work with the local press, regional press and national press. You can't escape me. You think you might see me today, tomorrow you'll probably see me on TV. So I do a lot of radio work, TV work. And again, that's been international too. So I have been on international television as well. I do that because I want to help educate people, and that's really why I'm here today. So Fran and I know each other because I'm interested in helping educate patients, and I think that's where our relationship started.
Right, so there you go. You know a bit about Dean. The first question, I must admit, I do like. The question that came through, I'm going to put two of them together. The first question is what is the point of a GP? And then to add to something else, why are you here and not being a doctor right now? Okay?
To be honest, that's a fair question, isn't it? I really liked this question of what's the point of a GP? And I should point out, I've not researched these questions, so what you're getting is my emotional feeling right here and right now of these questions and what I know. So the whole point of a GP is that it is your gateway to healthcare. So I'm going to talk from a global perspective, not just the NHS, but in the NHS, GPs are the gatekeepers to the rest of the system. Without GPs, without primary care, you couldn't afford a healthcare system because GPs filter through the majority of the problems. We're the last genuine generalist of healthcare. So we deal with absolutely anything that walks through the door so that higher up the system, where it's more expensive and more specialised, they don't have to be overwhelmed by it. So there's this theory that if you removed general practice, if you removed primary care, healthcare systems could not operate because they could not function, one, because of the sheer numbers, and two, because of the cost. So general practice is there to gatekeep, but also to provide this generalised access to healthcare systems. We are the last generalists, so we don't just work in helping people be solving problems, stopping people being ill, but we also work in preventative care. We're the glue that binds systems together. So again, you'll struggle to find anybody else in the NHS that knows as much about how the NHS works and who to contact when something's going wrong as a GP. That's the whole point of GPs. We add a huge amount of value to the system, as it were. So for every pound spent in healthcare, there is this concept called a healthcare multiplier, where if you spend £1, actually the economy benefits from that. And for every pound invested in general practice or primary care, you get about a double of return of that. So if you spent £10, in theory, the economy will benefit by £20. So there is this economic benefit of general practice. Why am I here? So, as I said, I work 3 days a week as a GP, and I'm going to be very blunt and honest. I couldn't work 5 days a week as a GP, and I don't advise GPs to work 5 days a week. For the reason being, it is too mentally draining. Imagine sitting your final exams at school, how hard that was, but do that all day, every day. And on top of that, if you get an exam question wrong, it's not just, oh damn, I didn't get an A, it's an, oh damn, somebody died. So to work 5 days a week at full capacity of your brain, with the possibility that if you get it wrong, somebody dies, it has this huge burden on the brain. And by huge burden on the brain, I don't just mean being tired, I actually mean your brain won't function. How do you get into your car and drive? Well, you don't actually, you get in and you feel a bit drunk. So we know that when doctors have worked hugely long shifts, they're much more likely to have road traffic accidents. They die early, they turn to alcohol, they turn to drugs, because the brain just cannot cope. So for me to be a doctor for you, as long as I possibly can, to be the best that I can for you, I work 3 days a week seeing patients as a GP. Those other 2 days I don't sit at home, I do that with what I call the medical politics thing of being involved in system design, because I don't want to be useless for those 2 days, but I just can't allow my brain to burn out 5 days a week. So I do it to preserve myself. That's my answer. Other doctors I'm sure will have different answers, but I advise my training doctors, don't work 5 days a week clinically because you won't last.
So why aren't doctors replaced for those, is it the cost to their practice for the 2 days that you're not working? Because that's where the system's falling down, because you can't see a doctor.
Yeah, so as a GP, we are, in theory, private companies. So the NHS, I should point out, isn't one organisation, it's thousands and thousands of different organisations. When I'm not there, I pay for a GP to look after my system. So I as an owner of that business, so I'm a GP partner, I pay wages to my team to look after the patients, and we all work together. When I'm not there, I will pay for a GP to be there. So for example, to be here today, it's cost me £1,000 personally. I've spent £1,000 just to be able to sit in front of you, to be able to talk to you. I can't do... Well, I agree. I'm glad you agree. Your donations are available on the way out. I can't do that every single day because I'll go bust. I too have, children to feed, clothes to buy, houses and whatnot. So there's only so much care I can buy for you out of the money that I've got available as a private business. And therein lies the problem. How much money can I give to keep looking after you without going bankrupt myself? And that's different between different practices. And there's no rule that says I have to provide X, Y, and Z. So some practices you'll find buy a lot of care for patients, some practices buy less care. Now my practice doesn't have brilliant access. I'm not going to say we're perfect because we're just not. If you're registered at my practice, you too will have the same 8 o'clock struggle. But that's not because I'm not trying, it's because I don't have more money to buy you more care. Now the NHS is incredibly wasteful, but general practice is not a part of that. General practice provides 90% of the access to the NHS with around 10% of the budget.
So if we go on, because you've gone on to a few of the questions, there's a lot of questions about the system and about how it works. And you've touched on one of them, which was the question of why do I have to ring it up at 8 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
Now, we had an answer yesterday that was very different, maybe, but why? Why do we have to ring as patients at 8 o'clock in the morning?
So the funny answer that I gave Fran yesterday is because that's when we open, of course. But I guess the real question that you're asking is, well, why on earth can't I phone at 10 and get an appointment? Why can't I phone at 12 and get an appointment? And that's partly, again, because of the cash thing and there's just not enough bums on seats. There aren't enough doctors, there aren't enough nurses, there aren't enough healthcare assistants, pharmacists, physiotherapists. Everyone in my practice, I haven't got enough of them to meet the demands of people coming in saying, I'm poorly, I need help. So when we open the system on a day, some of those appointments have already gone. So at my practice, for example, on a day I might have 100 appointments available across a range of people. Not just me, of course, but across a range of people. Some of those appointments have already been pre-booked because people are poorly or they've got a follow-up with appointment. So there is the difference between I'm poorly today, I need to be seen today, versus I need to be seen in a week's time or a couple of weeks' time. So some of those appointments have already been put aside for that. So if you're poorly today, those appointments usually go within around 10 to 15 minutes.
Just a question that I have had that might fit in quite well here is that if I go on the news, I hear that there's more doctor's appointments out there, okay? So how can what you be saying be true if that's the same? There's more doctor's appointments.
So I'm not convinced that there are more doctor's appointments, Fran.
No?
I think that this is imaginative accounting. So the government every year needs to say to the taxpayer and the voter, we have improved access, because that's what everyone complains about. They need to say we've increased the number of doctor's appointments available. So as that filters down from the government to the local regions to the GPs, we get told, increase your appointments. Well, I haven't got more people and I haven't got many more hours in the day, and I've already told you I'm burning out, so I can't actually add on many more appointments. So what I will do is document more clearly when I'm doing work that you don't see. So if I'm doing an insurance form for somebody, which I would have done, for example, in my lunch hour, instead of just doing it in my lunch hour, I now turn that into an appointment. Do I see somebody? No. Is it work that was already there? Yes. But does it now look like an appointment from a government statistics perspective? Yes. So we've managed to increase the number of appointments in the NHS really, really well. But have we actually increased any capacity? No. That's that part.
Okay.
Your question was about doctor's appointments.
Yes.
But, I'm going to do a quick straw poll of the audience here. Phil, you don't have to answer because it's quite a personal question. But who has struggled to see a doctor recently? Please raise your hand. Who has been offered an appointment with somebody other than a doctor recently? Please raise your hand. Okay, so you can almost see the point that I'm trying to make here. So when you're getting into the NHS now, in the past you'd say, I'm poorly, I want to see a doctor. That's not what the NHS is now, and it's certainly not going to be that in the future. When you go into the NHS now and you're poorly, you don't see a doctor, you see a clinician. And that can be a range of people. Again, pharmacist, nurse, doctor, physiotherapist, healthcare assistant, nurse associate, any range of people, because actually, do you always need a doctor? The answer really is no. So it's a case of you book an appointment, you see somebody, and it's not necessarily a doctor. And in those terms, have we increased clinical appointments? Yes, a lot, a huge amount. So actually, general practice sees around 1.4 million patients per day, roughly. That's insane. Nobody else provides that capacity. But what I should point out is it's not GPs who see 1.4 million patients per day, it's the GP team or the primary care team.
Okay, that might lead on to one of the other questions, and it is about the gatekeeper. Because why do I have a gatekeeper, a receptionist, who is asking my life history? All I want to do is to see a doctor.
Okay, Fran, can I put you on hold for 1 second? We have a question, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So from a deaf person's perspective, obviously I'm a deaf person that can speak, but I can't answer the phone. I can't phone up for a GP appointment. I can't hear what they're saying over the phone. So I have to go through somebody else. And because I'm a residential student, I go through the staff that I live with. So they'll phone up at 8 o'clock in the morning for an appointment. They'll get through to a receptionist or somebody and they'll ask, what's the appointment for? And they'll have to explain, oh, I'm calling on behalf of Noah. I'm calling on behalf of Noah and I need an appointment for this. Or I can't speak to you. I need to talk to Noah. But he's deaf. He can't hear you. Oh, I need him to say his date of birth. Well, he can't hear you, so he can't understand what you're talking about. Well, I can't give you an appointment because I need to talk to Noah. And that then, by the time we've gone through the whole kind of charade of back and forth of Noah, can you just make a noise so they know you're there? Noah, can you just say some numbers? Can you say your date of birth? And they're having to prop the phone up, interpret, sign to me what they're talking about. By the time we've gone to book an appointment, they go, sorry, we haven't got any left. Bye. But we phoned exactly at 8 o'clock on the dot for an appointment. So it's deaf access that's even harder. Because I can speak, ideally I can go to a GP. I need an interpreter, but I can go to a GP and I can lip read. But some deaf people can't do that, and they can't access the GP appointments whatsoever. So their health problem that was a problem today that needs to be seen today, they end up seeing in a few weeks' time, and it's got 10 times worse because they can't access. So how are we going to do that?
What a brilliant point. Thank you.
It's getting worse for deaf people.
Can I answer both questions, but in a quite a long-winded way? And I'm going to do it via a bit of a history lesson, if that's okay. So I'm going to give you a bit of a history of the NHS. And when you understand the history of the NHS, you'll understand a little bit about where we are and where we're going. Because part of the reason I think why we have poor standards in the NHS now compared to where we used to have standards is because the NHS has changed over the years, and the need from the NHS has also changed. So, history lesson, you ready? Don't fall asleep on me. Many people don't like history. So the NHS was actually invented after the Second World War, around 1948, and it was invented primarily actually for economics. The country was in a terrible financial position because of the Second World War. And the system that we had at the time was a bunch of private hospitals, and GPs were private too. And GPs were actually just guys who decided hospital life wasn't for them. They'll set up a surgery in their home, and their wife will be the receptionist, and their children will be the porters. So they'll change dirty towels and stuff when needed, and the wife will keep a note of when appointments and greet people at the door and that sort of stuff. And the GP, who used to be a hospital doctor, who just decided to quit hospitals, will run a system from there. And it worked reasonably well. And this is pre-NHS. But because healthcare is expensive, it was a reserve of people who had cash. You went to your GP and you paid for it, or you went to your GP and said, here's a chicken, that's all I've got, can you please treat me? And that kind of worked, but it didn't work for everyone, because not everyone could afford it. Well, the government looked at this on the back of a guy who wrote this really great report about why illness exists, and said, well, can we enhance this by just bringing it into the government and let's be this big national system? And that's what they did. So the NHS was invented by saying to GPs, we want you all to work for us, not for patients. We will pay you regularly so patients don't have to pay you. And every time a patient comes to see you, don't charge them. Just we'll keep paying you and just keep seeing patients. So we've evolved from this system of post-World War II, people only seeing a GP every now and then because they weren't used to seeing GPs. And actually the government spent about 3% of the country's wealth on this system. And the whole point was to get people back into work, stop them being sick, because when they were working, they could make money. And when you make money, you're not ill. So the whole point was actually, once we've got the NHS, we won't need it, because everyone will be well, everyone will be fine, and we can decommission it a few years later. Well, we are a few years later now, and actually what we've found is now, instead of spending 3% of the country's budget on the NHS, we're spending just over 10%. We have many, many more people needing healthcare every single day. The country has got healthier, but also sicker at the same time. So this NHS, which seemed to work quite well and worked at first, is actually crumbling at the moment because it cannot cope with the demand, because demand just grows and grows and grows and grows. So we have this evolving system of how can we keep up with the demand. So coming back to the question of why do we have a gatekeeper? Why do we have somebody at the front desk? And why do they treat me who's deaf in this way? it's quite frankly because we have evolved and we can't keep up with how quick we're evolving. So general practice teams won't know, for example, or they should know, but they won't know that the Equality Act exists. Now, the Equality Act is a law which means that we have to treat everybody, irrespective of their protected characteristic, equally. Whether you're male, female, heterosexual, homosexual, whether you're part of a union, all of these sorts of things, including disabilities, we have to try everything we can to help you within a reasonable means. And that reasonable means for somebody who's deaf might mean having a hearing loop. Now, we know they're not great, but it's having one. So actually what most practices do is they have a hearing loop. Tick, done. So that's you solved now. I'll move on to somebody else. And actually what we haven't...
Because you're not booking me an interpreter, you're not...
Exactly,
like,
exactly. That's my point. But we think we've fulfilled the requirement, and we haven't fulfilled the requirement. And I don't think that's because people are being mean. I think it's because they're too busy concentrating on a million other things. They didn't even know that was an issue for you. So there's an awareness aspect of it. And that comes back to the whole gatekeeping thing, because that is a massive issue, but it's one amongst 1,000. So when it comes to the gatekeeping, and at 8 o'clock and the phones turn on, do I just let you all phone me? Do I sit at the end of the phone? Is that really possible? No. And as I said earlier, GPs aren't actually the only people you need. You might need a physiotherapist, you might need a pharmacist. So I need somebody to make that decision for me, so you get to who you need to be seen by, rather than just coming to me. Because it's a bit of, I'm quite expensive. It's a bit of a waste of money and my time for me to say, well, you don't need me, you need my nurse associate. So we have receptionists, and we don't really call them receptionists anymore. We call them healthcare navigators. So they're supposed to help you navigate through this ridiculously complex system. So they're not dragons.
Yes, they are.
On occasions, they may act like dragons. But so, in fact, would you like to ask a question, or would you like to say something? Because this is a very common challenge. Far away.
They are rude, incredibly rude, and that is one of the problems that you mentioned. And also, people that have dementia or other issues where they can't communicate themselves. And instead of just taking the time to explain or to just use common sense, obviously they can't do it, so let me find a way to help them. They don't. They're just awful.
Okay.
And then they send you away, and then people don't get the care that they need, or they end up in A&E. And that is so regular, it's appalling. It's not healthcare. And
So
if they were nicer to start with, that would help a lot of people, because if you call up and you're speaking to a receptionist about your personal issues and they're horrible, it automatically makes people defensive.
Thank you. So the comment is about receptionist teams and healthcare navigators being rude, offensive, unhelpful, and that puts up a barrier to people trying to access help. So thank you for making that comment. I'm not going to agree or disagree, but I am going to try and explain it. So for any of you who've had that experience, I'm sorry. I apologise. That shouldn't have been your experience. We know full well in healthcare that having a relationship, a positive relationship, a rapport with people saves lives. Because when you're poorly, you need to have trust that you can come to me and I'm going to help you. And that includes everyone in my team. So my healthcare navigators should know that by having a positive rapport with you, one day that may save your life because you feel comfortable to access us. So I apologise if that hasn't been your experience. Across the region, across Doncaster, just Doncaster, we will have possibly a couple of thousand of healthcare navigators. I don't want to say they're all dragons, because they're just not. I don't want to say they're all terrible, because they're just not. Are some of them going to be terrible? Yes. Are some doctors terrible? Yes. Because we're humans, we're not all the same. But that doesn't excuse them. But I want to point out that some of them are absolutely brilliant, and we should learn from what they do good, and we should try and spread that so everybody does good. When we see those that do it bad, we need to solve it and we need to change it, because it's not okay. So I agree with you in the sense that some of them are really, really terrible, and that has to change, and I apologise where that's been your experience. but that shouldn't be the norm. I wouldn't class that as a norm, and I would class that as something that we need to tackle. Now, as I said earlier, and I was coming on to the history of the NHS, when I talked about GPs setting up their own little businesses with their wives and kids, the NHS isn't one organisation, it's thousands. So when I talk about general practice, I don't talk about one organisation, I talk about thousands. And they're independent organisations. So when I improve one, I don't improve all of them. We've got the rest to work on. So if you've had a poor experience at 1, 2, 20, 30, 40, 50, that's because they're independent and we need to help them improve. And some of them are just terrible, but some of them are impeccable too. So it doesn't answer your question, but it helps to understand why it is what it is. Possibly later I can come on to help talk about how we might improve it, if that's okay.
I don't just see healthcare as just being seeing a doctor or a nurse or anything. It's everybody that's involved, receptionists included. So even if it's great in one aspect, if it's poor on somewhere else, to me that's poor healthcare.
I would agree. Healthcare isn't just a doctor and it's not just a nurse, it's the entire team.
And I think that's one of the things that I see as Health Watch, and I see the difference. So I can have where we hear about different doctors, people talk to us so that we can make a change. And that's where actually voicing that can help, because it's not just one doctors that we can see. We do see the other side where we have it whereby it is the best doctors in the world and it is the whole team, and you see that and you see the spiral go and improve for everybody when you've got a doctor's, your general practice, where from the receptionist to the nurses to the doctors, they are all part of that positive, exactly what you want and should be able to get as a patient, okay? So there is a place where there's a voice for the people and the patients to be heard, because there's 37 different GPs practices in Doncaster, and they are all individual ones. So it's not a case of improving one and getting that message to one. It's a case of constantly speaking with everybody, and they're saying, so your experience is valid, and this is why the independent voice of Health Watch is important, because we can do something about it, hopefully. We have, I think there was 2 questions. I think we're one up the top there. Yes, you did at one point wave.
I've just wondered, like, it's not, you've got access to everybody's health records. You basically know her, for example, is deaf. Why is this not one of the first things that the receptionist sees, so they can identify and reduce that barrier to healthcare?
On the top of all of the, just adding to that one, on the top of all of the deaf students in our residential, in big capital letters, it says this patient is deaf. They don't always listen to that one, but they do.
Thank you. So the question...
Things like being a veteran, English not being your first language, these are all barriers that stop people successfully navigating through the healthcare system. Why are the receptionists not privy to that level of information?
So,
I was going to say, if you remember to sort of repeat that so that everybody can
so
get that.
The question is, we have information about patients, for example, that the patient is deaf, the patient is a veteran, the patient might be a wheelchair user or something, and we often note that on the medical record. When the receptionists see that, why don't we necessarily do something about it? So there are several answers to this. One, again, the NHS isn't one organisation, it's thousands. So I'm not just thinking about GP here, but I'm talking about the entire NHS. We don't share records. So I can't see a hospital record, the hospital record can't see my record. So when you go to a hospital and you say, well, my GP knows this, the hospital don't know it, they can't see your record. And when you come back to me from the hospital and you say, well, the hospital knew this, I can't say, well, I saw that, because we don't share records. But from why? I'll come back to that in a second if that's okay. So why don't we share records is a brilliant question. So on the GP record, we can, but don't always, add a note saying, for example, that the patient is deaf. So first of all, there may be no note on your record. In the case where there is a note on your record, there's no obligation to read it. And because the person who is reading it is human, and there might be a queue of 10 people behind you, they might just ignore it. When you look at your record, you can see there's a lot of notifications. It's not just saying that you're deaf, you're a wheelchair user. It's also telling me the government want me to check your blood pressure. The government want me to check your vaccinations history. The government want me to check you about smoking. So usually there's not one alert on your note. There's probably about 10 or 15. And there's this concept of information density. You give me so much information, I go blind. I can't see it. There's so much on there, I missed the fact that it said you were deaf. I just didn't see it because there's a million other things that it wants me to do. And on top of that, I'm tired, I'm a human. There's a list of people. You're upset because you're poorly. I've just had an argument with somebody, I'm hungry. It's really, really easy to miss things like that. So again, I apologise, it shouldn't be missed, but we're human and it is missed. So could we make the healthcare record better so that it's not missed? Yes. At the moment in the UK, for general practice, we've got 3, and the 4th one has just been approved, of health records systems. We mainly use 2 of them, and it's about 50-50. They're really old, they're really out of date, and they need to be improved. It's not brilliant. It's basically information overload. You give me so much information, I can't see it, I go blind. So the question is, then, why don't we just have one health record? Because we're a capitalist country. The whole point is to allow people to flourish and compete. So we have many companies trying to advertise to the government and saying, well, use our system, use our system. And that's great. Competition is wonderful because it drives up standards. But it also means that when a hospital goes and says, well, I'm going to buy a computer system, they've got people pitching at them left, right and centre saying, use ours, use ours, use ours. This one's cheap, this one's great. And they choose one. So because there is a menu of systems out there, across all the thousands of organisations in the NHS, everyone buys different ones, and you know what? They don't talk to each other. And they don't talk to each other because they're private companies who don't want to share. So remember, the NHS isn't an organisation. The NHS is a system of thousands of private companies working together, and private companies don't share unless they're forced to. So you don't have one healthcare record. You've got lots of them, lots of them. And even in a hospital, for example, you might even have 2 or 3 different records that don't talk to each other. It's insane. So I can't easily communicate with the NHS because the NHS isn't an organisation, it's a system.
Is that changing though?
So the question is that changing? And you'll have seen possibly in the press in the past couple of weeks, a document was released called the 10-year plan. And in that 10-year plan, there was this concept of a single healthcare record. So the 10-year plan is a bit more like a manifesto. It's a bit like a we'd like to do this. So I don't know the answer to your question. Will they actually do it? I don't know. They tried it many years ago. It cost a huge amount of cash, and then they gave up. They've actually tried it on a couple of occasions. There are some countries that have it. Estonia famously has a single healthcare record wherever you go. Lithuania has one actually. So there are many countries that you think, well, other people have done it. Why haven't we? At the moment, nobody has actually invested the cash to say, let's have one healthcare record. But if you do have one healthcare record, that ruins that capitalist idea of competition, because then one person, one company controls the whole lot. Is that actually a good idea?
But at the cost, not having that information available to everybody that's involved in your healthcare, that's at the expense of patients.
Yeah, so access to information from a healthcare perspective is vital. We can't provide you with safe healthcare without knowing as much as we possibly can about you. We know that your health will deteriorate when you are passed from one part of the NHS to another. That handover process is a ridiculously risky process. Now, we try to make it seamless so you don't know you've been handed over. For example, if you have a problem and you go to Doncaster Hospital and then you're transferred to Leeds, you think, well, it's just the NHS. It's not. It's Doncaster and it's Leeds. It's different. And that handover is dangerous because your notes may not go. The people in Leeds may not know what's happened to you. You might get a medication that's wrong. You might get a treatment that's wrong because the information is not shared very well. And when you come back to the community, when you come back to me in the GP, I may not see that information. So each handover point is a danger point in the NHS. So if we have one single record, we can look at it, we can share it, and in theory that improves healthcare. There is a but. Do you remember what I said about information density? Do I really want to read everything that happened to you in Leeds? Because when we say healthcare, we don't just talk about the doctors, we talk about the nurses, we talk about the healthcare assistants. Anybody then will put into your notes. There'll be thousands of pages, most of which is irrelevant to me helping you make a diagnosis, but I then have to sift through it. So that healthcare density is also known to put risks towards you. So yes, I want a single healthcare record, but I also want it to be filterable so that I can sift through some of the noise that isn't relevant to be making a decision. And I need technology to be good enough to do that for me rather than me having to use my brain. Because I already told you at the end of every day I'm dying, I'm dead. I don't want to make it even worse, because what will happen then is instead of seeing 40 patients a day, I'll only be able to see 20.
Right. I'm just going to bring us back round to the system, because there's a few questions that have come in, and I think what I'm going to do is just throw about 3 of them at you,
Okay.
so that you can answer all of them. And I'm just trying to remember them. So one of the questions out there is about enhanced access. What is that? How do I get booked on those? So I think that's something, and it might be explain what enhanced access is. Another question is, when I do get to see a doctor, I'm sat there, I walk in the room, and it's you've got one condition. Why? You know, because I'm a person. There's lots of different things in there. And then, because as I said, everybody's being great, but let's try and get to the rest of the system. The other system is, if I can't get an appointment with you, what do I do? Because at the moment, I know from some of the research that we've done, people are turning up at A&E, which isn't the best thing. So there's a mix of questions there, if we can go through that.
Okay, remind me of the first one, because I remember the whole...
We've got enhanced access,
enhanced access, that's it. Okay,
one
thank you.
condition,
Yep.
and what do I do if I can't get an appointment?
Okay, so I'm just going to correct you on something. We're not getting an appointment with the doctor. You're getting an appointment with the clinician, and that's really important. Now, you might hate me for that, but I'm going to keep reminding you, because that's the future of NHS. So, enhanced access. So, general practice, we have a contract with the government. I told you we used to work out of our houses with our kids and wives and whatnot, and the government said to us, here's a contract to go deliver care for us. And that contract determined how we should care for you. It hasn't actually changed all that much ever since 1948. And actually, our contract is so ridiculously basic. It says I've got to look after people who are sick, people who think they're sick, people who are pregnant, or people who are dying. And I do it in a way that I determine with the patient. And that is a general summary of the contract. Honestly, it's that basic. So if you, anything above and beyond that, the government needs to define it and often pay us for it. So if the government says, well, I want you to do blood pressure checks, they say, well, pay us, because it's not in my contract. If I want you to check about smoking, well, pay us, because it's not in your contract. So we have lots and lots of bolt-ons then, and one of these bolt-ons is something called enhanced access. So general practice is supposed to be open between the hours of 8 and 6:30. Nobody's stopping me there. In Doncaster, in most practices, it's open between 8 and 6. Has anybody noticed that?
Yep.
Yep, but the national contract is 6:30. Because locally, we negotiated to hand it over to the out-of-hours service from 6 to 6:30 so we can finish off our paperwork. But in theory, general practice is supposed to be open from 8 to 6:30. So after 6:30, the government said, well, A&Es are getting busy. People are at work, they need to see doctors out of work time. So we want you to do more. We want you to do more hours. So they gave us an extra contract called enhanced access, which is basically we offer appointments outside of the hours of 8 to 6:30, so usually after 6:30. It doesn't have to be done by a GP, and in most occasions it's not done by a GP. So you might, for example, have an appointment with a nurse, healthcare assistant, physiotherapist, pharmacist, any of those sorts of people after 6:30 or at a weekend. Now, I can see heads shaking, and I suspect that's because most of you did not even know that existed, or you're not being offered it. Yeah. Now, one of the reasons why you're not being offered it is because of this stupid computer system that I talked about. So when I look at my diary and see what appointments are available, it's not easy to see. It's not on my diary. I have to access a separate diary to see it. And quite honestly, most of our teams just forget it exists. And it's as simple as that. So most of our teams are too busy with a day job to look on that extra diary on a different page to see if there's an appointment available for you. So one of the simple things that you could do to help yourself is say, are there any enhanced hours or extra hours appointments available? Can you check on the extra diary, please? That's a quick fix for the NHS. And you might be able to get an appointment in the evening or at a weekend. Try it. So the second question was, when I see my clinician, it's they'll only let me have one problem. So this harks back to really how doctors are trained. So even though I'm mentioning clinicians, it actually harks back to how doctors are trained. So we are trained to diagnose your problem and treat your problem. And there's a structure to this. So within a 10-minute consultation, I can almost narrow it down to minute by minute of what I'm supposed to do. There is that strict a structure as to what I'm supposed to do. If you come in reeling off 20 or 30 problems, for my brain that's struggling because I'm tired and I haven't had my breakfast and I need a wee and all those sorts of things, I'm confused with the structure. And I can't fit it into that because all of these are unrelated and I don't know what to do. On top of that, I've only got 10 minutes. Actually, I don't have 10 minutes. I probably have about 7 because I need to document it too. So in theory, the answer is, technically, we can't do everything in one consultation. Can you bring it back to another consultation? Now, the reality is that that list of problems may have been related. And I expect you all to think, well, I'm just ill. I don't really care that they're separate problems. To me, they're one problem. I'm just ill. So when I'm training doctors, I help them to understand that that first 30 seconds to a minute, you allow the patient to tell you everything. It could be completely unrelated, but get it off your chest, tell me everything. And in that 30 seconds to a minute, essentially what you and I are then going to do is set the agenda of what we can achieve. I might say to you, whoa, that feels a little bit overwhelming. Can't do all of that today because we haven't got enough time. Which bit do you want to address today? And I'll book you back in. Or actually in that 30 seconds to a minute, it might be apparent to me that it's all related. And there's a light bulb moment that says, well, hang on a minute, you've just described the disease to me perfectly. So that 30 seconds to a minute is vital to get everything off your chest as far as I'm concerned. I want to hear it all. But that's not how we're trained. How we're trained is, give me your problem, I'll solve your problem in 10 minutes. So there is something about moving the medical profession on to allowing you to talk about anything you want in that 30 seconds to a minute. But also from the patient perspective of understanding that actually we can't achieve everything in one go if it's unrelated. On the topic of agenda, your agenda is make me better. My agenda is don't let this patient die. And again, I'm being blunt. So when you come in and say, oh, my foot's really itchy, I've got this rash on my foot, but also I coughed up some blood yesterday, but let's talk about the foot. And I'm like, well, I'm not talking about the foot. I want to talk about the blood. So there has to be a negotiation between us. And there's a reason why I'm trying to say, please talk about the blood rather than the foot, even though the foot is your supposed problem. So your agenda is fix me. My agenda is don't let you die. And we have to negotiate at that beginning to make sure that you're safe. It may be that I go off on one and say, we must talk about this topic today. We'll pick up the other one another day, even though the other topic is your preferred topic. I'm trying to stop you dying. And again, that's how we're taught. So most doctors will try to pick up with the agenda that is going to cause you most problem in their eyes from their training. Having that discussion openly is helpful. So open it up and say, are we negotiating here?
Like last November, I thought I did have a normal cold and I was feeling very poorly. My temperature about 49. I thought it was just a normal cold, but then the staff realised I was very, very ill. I'm on myself, so they sent me to the doctor. I didn't know, even like trying to ring like 8 o'clock in the morning and didn't get the last appointment of the day, not like 9ish. So I finally got the appointment and I didn't know, I'm trying to explain my throat and everything, my symptoms, and I checked my temperature and checked my heartbeat and checked thing, and they told me that I got strep and they gave me some antibiotics. But I didn't know how bad I was until they told me the symptom. I told them the symptom and they told me what's wrong with me. So it was a good point that I went.
Yeah.
Positively. Well, I'm a bit shocked that you're saying that you're going to ignore certain things like, okay, so they've not read them other appointments. If I went into a room with these students and I worked with these students for a full day without breaks and dinners or anything, and went in and thought, I'm just going to ignore that information, I don't need to read that. I know I've got to do it, but I'm too busy. And then that something happens, I have to read their information and go in and teach them and support them. But if I've read that and then something that doesn't really matter, it's important to have more training to actually think, I'm just going to take that 30 seconds to have a look at them extra appointments. I'm going to take that 30 seconds to actually read that more information. Surely that's going to benefit you more like we do when we go into a classroom.
So there are 2 points here then, if that's okay. The first point is, so thank you for pointing out how ill you were and how hard it is to get an appointment. I'm going to come to that very quickly first, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And I want to give you all an example of a situation that I might be put in, and I want you to sit in the doctor's seat for now. So I'm a partner, I own a practice, I'm in charge in theory, and on occasion I'll be what's called the duty doctor. So it's up to me to run the ship for the day. If anything goes wrong, it's my fault. Anything that people don't know what to do, they come to me. So for a brief moment, you're all the duty doctor. So it's a typical busy day. You've done your 40 patients for the day, 30 patients, whatever it is. All of the appointments are gone. You now get a phone call from your healthcare navigator saying, I've got Trudy on the phone. She's got a temperature of 39 and she feels really sick. All of the appointments have gone and I've got still a list of stuff to do. What do I do? So what I'm telling you is that the surgery is full. We've hit capacity. We don't have any capacity anymore, but there is a patient on the phone now who's really ill.
Isn't
What do I do with them?
the same-day healthcare clinic is for?
It is potentially. So that's part of the system. So, and I'll do a quick vote if that's okay. Who's happy with me as a GP turning that patient away to a different part of the system? Please raise your hand.
Depends.
Yeah, we need more contact.
So sat on the fence a little bit.
Very, very, very much depends on what is wrong with the patient that's phoned up,
Okay.
whether their needs can be met appropriately with a different service.
Yeah.
Because if you're sending them to, I don't know, same-day health centre, for example, and you've sent them there, they've seen them and gone, actually, no, that this is really above my scope of practice, I can't do this. They're going to send you somewhere else, and you're just getting bounced between.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you've got to try and figure out which part of the system is going to suit the patient best to meet their needs.
You're absolutely right. So
Yeah, I got my medicine, I think.
And it feels like you're saying, well, that patient's not that important to that bit of paperwork. What are you saying? We're trying to find out what's most important to you. Are you trying to say the paperwork, or is it just dealing with other patients?
well, that's up to you. So for the podcast perspective, I just want to explain that the audience is undecided at the moment. Essentially what they've said is they need a bit more information. They need a bit more information about this patient. So that paperwork, for example, is one of the patients I saw earlier who might have cancer and they need to do a referral and they have to be seen for cancer. So it's not unimportant, it's important. But at the moment, what we've said is we need more information to make a decision about this patient who's hanging on the phone right now because we're full. It may be that we send them somewhere else. Who's going to get the information?
Care navigator.
So you want the care navigator to ask the patient questions, is that what you're telling me?
If they have to.
Okay, so do we, look, we're going to do a vote on this because this is a really contentious topic, isn't it? And I'm sure you know what I'm getting at. Let's vote. Do you want the healthcare navigator to ask the patient personal questions to help understand whether or not they're ill and they need signposting? Put your hand up if you say yes. Okay, thank you. Again, for the podcast, that's the majority of the audience. Put your hand up if you say no. And we have some of the audience who say no. So it's a difficult situation. We need more information. Put your hand up if you want the doctor to ask the questions. We've got one hand going up. So if the doctor asks the questions, I then have to create another appointment because that's not questions, that's an appointment. But I've told you I've run out of appointments. And so I'm now in a position, do I pick up the phone to the patient who's ill or do I do the cancer referral? This is my situation, this is my dilemma. Put your hands up if you want me to use the phone call.
I want you to speak to your practice nurse.
Okay, put your hand up if you want me to do the cancer referral. Okay, so for the podcast, most people want me to do the cancer referral. So what we have now is we need more information and we understand there are other team members who might get that information for me. A hand went up over here.
I was just going to say, so obviously I work with Dean, and as a nurse on your duty days as well, you're saying I have 40 odd patients or whatever, I've run out, I've got someone on the phone, I've got a cancer referral, and as a nurse, how many times do I have to come to you for patients that are also in with me that need a doctor's second opinion? So it isn't just that 40 appointments and a bit of paperwork. I come to you constantly for a concern about a poorly patient that's coming to see me. A lot of the clinicians do, so it's not just a case of them 40 appointments. You tend to do a lot, double that just with the nurses' appointments for poorly patients that do then come into us as well.
Yeah, thank you, Kerry. So Kerry's just pointed out, so Kerry is our nurse associate at the practice, and she's just pointed out that I've given you an oversimplified scenario, and it's already a complex scenario. So in this complex scenario, it's a case of, do I pick up the phone? Do I do my cancer referral because I'm already full? But on top of being full, the work hasn't stopped. So if you walked into my surgery right now, my waiting room is empty. There's nobody there. It looks like we're not doing anything, it's quiet. But in reality, I'm doing these referrals. I'm speaking to Kerry. I'm not just speaking to Kerry, I'm speaking to my other clinicians, I'm speaking to receptionists, my pharmacist, my physiotherapist. So I'm doing all of that whilst it looks like I'm not doing anything. But we still have this sick patient on the phone, and at the moment, team, our patient is waiting. What do you want me to do? So the answer so far that you've given me is we need more information and we can use the team to do that. Well, as Kerry's just told you, she's busy. All of the team are busy. The only people who aren't busy, who have this role at the moment, are healthcare navigators. So my only option at the moment is to ask the healthcare navigator, take more information and give me a clue. So they do. They ask you information, and then they will send me a message internally on the system, and then I will make a judgment call of what to do with this patient.
So I'm just going to throw in there a question that comes straight into my head, is that we've changed the name from receptionist to the healthcare navigator, okay? So for the purpose of this, we're going to give more, the healthcare navigator is going to be able to listen to that patient potentially. Are they trained? Okay, so that's the question. Am I talking to a receptionist that you've just changed the name on so that it sounds better? Or have they actually got some training that means that they can make that decision?
Great question. So they're not just renamed, they're trained. They've all been on courses to recognise some of the early warning signs of patients deteriorating. Now I should point out, they're not clinicians, they're not doctors. So they're not supposed to be making decisions about you that has a direct impact upon your health, but what they can do is to categorise you as to how seriously ill you are or what service you need and get you to that service as fast as possible. For example, in my practice, we have posters on the wall that they can refer to that has parameters that say how ill you are. So as they're talking to you on the phone, they're looking at the poster and saying, which category do they fall into? How quickly do I need to contact Dean? But also over time, because we've worked together for years, we get to know each other. They know when to contact me, I know when to trust them, and you build a relationship, and that's what continuity does. So in answer to your question, they're trained, there are posters and information around for them to help make decisions, and they have a good idea, roughly, of what services are available, but those services change over time. So, at the moment, we have a consensus, I think, that my healthcare navigator is going to ask more questions, make a decision, and signpost the patient to a relevant part of the service, and that may not be me. That may mean saying, I'm sorry, we're full. Does everyone agree? Put your hand up if you don't agree. Okay, so for the podcast, we have a unanimous agreement in the audience that that is what we're going to do. Is it unanimous if I miss somebody? Not unanimous, sorry.
No, I just put your hand up.
Okay, so not unanimous, you don't agree or do agree? Don't agree.
Say
Okay.
again.
So do we all agree that the healthcare navigator is going to ask questions, make a decision with the clinician, and then signpost the patient to somewhere else in the system?
So are they trained as in they're reading a script, looking at something? Do they, like a diagram, do they have this? Yes. Do they have that? No.
No,
Is that
it's not that
something?
detailed.
It's not that detailed.
It's not that detailed.
then-
So the posters, the question was, do they have, for example, an algorithm that they follow of asking questions? So 111 works on that system. So 111 follows an algorithm. It's, do you have chest pain, yes or no? Are you short of breath, yes or no? Are you bleeding, yes or no? General practice healthcare navigators don't work like that. It's more of a case of, are you mentally unwell or are you physically unwell? Because if it's mentally unwell, it's one part of the system. If you're physically unwell, it's another part of the system. So it's that sort of signposting. And from a physical perspective, it might be, are you short of breath? Are you blue? Do you have chest pain? So it's those great big barn door obvious red flags. Beyond that, they send a message to me with the information that they have, and I will then make a quick snapshot clinical decision. So at the moment, we have a majority that we're going to signpost somewhere else in the system, but another couple of hands have come up. And I haven't forgotten your point about essentially us breaking the Equality Act. And I should point out, you know, if we are ignoring information in the medical record that says that you have a problem, for example, with hearing or disability, and we ignore that, we're breaking the Equality Act. But I don't think we're ignoring it. I think we're blind to it because of information overload, and that's like subtly different.
I have a question. AI is a big topic at the moment, specifically conversational AI. Is the NHS receptive to assisting its healthcare navigators by using conversational AI to help with people who are deaf, different language barriers, etc., and also being able to collate all that information, sift it, as you've said, to provide you with the necessary information you need to either make a diagnosis or to put somebody in the correct direction?
Thank you. So the question is about AI and whether or not the NHS is receptive to using AI to sift through some of that voluminous information or even sift through conversations with people or even have a conversation with somebody, I think is what you're getting at, to try and help decide where they need to be in the NHS or even come up with a diagnosis of how serious this is. So there are some AI models out there already used across the world, and we have a company, I'm going to highlight Babylon if that's okay, can I name drop? So Babylon's quite a famous one, which has been used in the UK previously by a company called GP at Hand, where when you're registered with that GP, you would usually go through an AI chatbot. You get access to their chatbot and it would help you make diagnoses. There is a big question mark at the moment as to how useful these are. So I believe in AI sifting through that information for me, and I talked about filtering the information so I don't get brain overload. I love that, I want that. There's also AI in the sense of, can it transcribe a letter for me so I don't have to type it, so it makes me faster? I'm quite keen with that too. Do I want it to make decisions for patients? Well, funnily enough, I think I can say this. When does the podcast go out?
It's going to be a while.
So I did some work for the Mail on Sunday, the Daily Mail yesterday actually, where they sent me transcripts of patient questions with a specialist answer versus AI, and I didn't know which was which, and I had to rate it and comment about the quality. And for me, it was barn door obvious which was the AI and which was the human. I knew which was which very easily, because the AI followed this very stereotypical pathway of answering the question, but not answering the question. So it's very easy to say...
It was a politician then.
Well, yeah, it's brilliant. Maybe we should replace politicians with AI rather than doctors. But you know, you've probably all heard of RICE for when you damage a joint: rest, ice, compression, elevation. So my AI answer to spraining my ankle might be, please follow RICE. Well, what good is that if you don't know what RICE is? What good is it if you say ice, put ice on it? Well, what do you actually mean? If I put ice on my joint, it's going to burn my skin. Whereas a human would say, take out a pack of frozen peas, put a cloth around it and apply it to the joint, because that will reduce the redness and swelling. So there is an answer, and there is a practical answer. At the moment, AI chatbots that give you those diagnoses and answers are not yet at that human level of assistance. But I think we're getting there. They've actually come on a huge way. The NHS is partially receptive and partially unreceptive. Remember, the NHS is not an organisation, it's thousands of organisations. Amongst those, people are already using AI. But there are some slow innovators, partially because it's not that good yet, partially because it's not free, partially because they like the good old-fashioned human touch, and partially because AI takes information elsewhere to store it and process it. And some people are nervous about that. How many of you, for example, want your health information from a chat with me to go to America to be processed? You know, if you came in because you've got discharge from somewhere funny and it smells funny, do you really want America having that on a server somewhere? Probably not. So there are some question marks over the safety of the information. For me, there's also the question mark of over-reliance on technology, because we have seen hacks recently, for example, of Marks and Spencer's or other companies, and it goes down. Well, what if the NHS goes down? What if actually you can't access a doctor because we're relying on AI? Where is your doctor then? There is no doctor until it's fixed. So we can use it, but I don't think we should rely upon it. Does that answer your question?
Very good answer.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I am aware that this is going around the topic and we've touched other places, but there are some questions that I want to bring in, okay? So I'm going to sort of shift us on, but I am going to ask the question of, is there a hack? You're a GP, do you get special treatment?
No. So I am registered at a practice here in Doncaster, so this is, you know, like I said, you can ask me anything personal questions.
Which one?
Tick Hill. Tick Hill. I'm quite happy to answer. So, and again, my practice is not perfect. Just like my practice, Tick Hill has access problems. So they're not unique. It's pretty much the same as every other GP practice in the UK. When I want an appointment, I will join the phone queue in the morning and the appointments will be gone. So I've now gone for the hack of walking in, joining the queue in the morning like everyone else does.
Do you not just diagnose yourself?
The question was, do I not just diagnose myself? Yes, but we're really bad at it. Funnily enough, and for those of you, anybody in the audience who's interested in medicine and going to medical school, as soon as you go to medical school, you're going to catch every disease going. You're going to diagnose yourself with Ebola, meningitis, fractured limbs. I'm sorry to say you will. You're going to get all of these things. We're terrible at diagnosing ourselves, which is why the General Medical Council says that I'm not supposed to. So I'm not supposed to diagnose myself. I'm not supposed to treat myself or friends or family because my mind is clouded because of impartiality. So I go and see my doctor. I'm registered with a doctor, or I go and see a clinician, I should point out. And I might see a nurse, I might see a pharmacist or somebody who is the right person to help me. But do I often get told, no, call back tomorrow? Yes, I do. I'm exactly the same as everyone else. And do I have a bypass number? Do I have a friend I can call? No. So I know your problems because I'm a patient too. I get the exact same treatment. When I'm referred to the hospital, I still join the same waiting list. At the moment, I'm on a waiting list and I've been on for about a year. I'm still waiting. I get the same texts that you do that saying, do you still want to stay on the waiting list? And I text back that says, yes, of course. And I'm still waiting. I don't have a fast track.
Right. I'm changing what we're planning to do because we're going around the houses, and I think this is great.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying that. But there are a couple of things that we discussed. And one of them, I think, is quite important. You've touched on some of it. It's that how, as a patient, do we get the best out of our appointment? You know, you've touched on some of it about the agenda, about what have you. So everybody in here, what's the hack? What's the way to sit down? I've got 10 minutes. How do I get the best out of my clinician? Okay?
Thank you. Yeah, you have one. Okay, so how do I get the best out of my clinician? What's the hack? So again, I'm going to apologise. It's not up for you as the patient to hack us to get the best out of us. It should be us being trained to do the best for you when you're ill. Because when you're ill, you don't want to engage your brain. You don't want to think about, oh, how do I sort this out to get the best out of this doctor? That's my job. But I'm pragmatic and I know that on occasions, rarely, or even often, the clinician might fail you in that consultation. And you might need a way to get more out of that consultation. So this is the hack. In that first 30 seconds to 1 minute, tell the clinician, I'm going to tell you everything. We can then decide which topic to discuss or decide if it's all one thing. But please let me tell you everything. That's hack one. So they're not going to interrupt you. They're going to let you listen because they know that's part of the training. You've basically just told them. And you've also just told them that you're going to negotiate. That's part of their training too. So basically you're reminding them of their training. Hack one, just talk. Tell them that you're going to negotiate after you've offloaded. Allow then the clinician to home in on something for you because there's a reason why they've homed in on that. Go through the motions of talking about it, let them examine you, and then after that examination and talking, there's a period of negotiation. So you're supposed to negotiate then on what you're going to do about it. Now the clinician can only negotiate what to do about it when in theory they know what your ideas are. They need to know what your thoughts are about it. They need to know your concerns. So that's not just what your ideas are, but actually what you're scared of. What might it be in the wildest dreams, and I'm scared of it, and I need to address that too. And then the last part is, why are you here? What's your expectation? What do you want from me? And the easy way to remember that is ICE. Ideas, concerns, and expectations. So for the first 30 seconds to a minute, negotiate. Tell them you're going to tell them everything, and then afterwards you can negotiate a topic. Later on, say, I'm going to tell you my ideas, concerns, and expectations, and we're going to make a plan on that. And I guarantee you that's going to transform your consultation. When the clinician knows what you think it is, what you're worried about, and what you want from it, you will get more satisfaction out of what's happened.
So I'm going to interrupt you on purpose, so excuse me, but now we're a couple of minutes into the appointment. Now, I'm the doctor. I'm now going to get up and open the door and expect you to leave. That's our reality.
Okay. So the point or the question was that the reality is, if that was to happen, so the negotiation and ideas, concerns and expectations, you might find the doctor or the clinician offended, standing up, opening the door and asking you to leave. Now, if that is your reality, that is unreasonable. I don't think anybody watching this podcast would say that that is okay. If that has happened to you, speak to the practice manager, and you may find that's not very helpful either. Because often it might be the partner who has done that, and the partner employs the practice manager. So how does that help? Well, that's your first point of call. Your next point of call might be to speak to people like HealthWatch. Because what has happened to you in that consultation is not okay. Nobody would find that reasonable, and you need to let people know if that has happened to you and that is your experience. That is not okay. I apologise if that's ever happened to you. As a doctor, if you came to me with your ideas, concerns and expectations, first of all, I'd laugh. And I'd say, well, who on earth taught you that? And then you say, Dean, and you say, oh God, I knew he would. And you'd laugh about it a little bit. We'd have a joke and then we'd move on and we'd make a plan. That's how it should go. If your receipt to doing this is negative, tell somebody. We as a medical profession, in theory, are wonderful. We do great. But in reality, we drop the ball frequently. When we drop the ball, point it out and bring us back up to standard.
So I'm going to bring in some of the other questions. I'm aware that we've only got 15 minutes. A lot of the other questions that came in that was about an access on women's health. I won't repeat the sentences that I got, but basically it's rubbish. Doctors are rubbish on this sort of score. So it's how as well can we improve the service for people like women?
Mm-hmm.
You know, doctors and the NHS just appear to be all about a bloke.
Can I just say that was going to be my point. I run a women's health project in Doncaster, and obviously the cervical smear rates are declining, and one of those reasons is the pain relief is not offered, and it is not, it's ignored. And I've spoken to, I particularly work with menopausal women. There's 22,000 of us in Doncaster alone, and the kind of the healthcare for, I'm not just going to say midlife women, because obviously menopause affects, women at different ages, but particularly around pain relief for gynecological and reproductive issues is just not offered whatsoever, and that becomes a real barrier for women accessing really important screening appointments. So how do we get GPs to kind of like take that on board and improve women's healthcare experiences?
Thank you. What a wonderful question about women's experiences, and actually it ties in a little bit with deaf experiences. So we can see then that there are areas of healthcare that are, quite frankly, Cinderella topics that are just neglected. Women's health is one of those that has historically been neglected since day one. Yeah. So it's not a new problem. It's not just people are lazy. Actually, medicine has evolved around men. Mm-hmm. So healthcare research is predominantly done with men on men. Yeah. Drug development is predominantly done with men on men. Medicine as a profession didn't allow women into it. I cannot remember the date, I'm afraid to say, but for an exceptionally long time. So the fact that we have women in medicine now, actually in some cases feels unusual. But how absurd is that?
Absolutely.
As 50% of the population, it should be equal, but it's not. And historically, it never has been equal. No. So there's a massive amount of work that needs to be done to bring equality into medicine, not just actually in the consultation of who's there, but actually the knowledge that we have of the human body, the knowledge that we have of science, the knowledge that we have of the drugs, the knowledge that we have of the research, because it's just not there. It doesn't exist. Yeah, no. And it's being done slowly at the moment, but we're not there.
A lot of surgeries don't even have a female doctor.
That's absolutely right, and that's not necessarily because of lack of trying. So sometimes it's just a case of you can't find one to employ. So it may not be intention, it may just be circumstance. So for example, I'm a male, I don't know much about women's health. Is that because I'm terrible? Well, actually, I was brought into medicine not being educated on women's health. I haven't had as many opportunities, so I'm never going to be that great at it. I don't employ a female doctor because when I tried to employ one, there wasn't one available. So there are some problems there that are not of our making, but we can solve the solutions for the future. How I would like you to address that for now, because none of this, and I'm sorry to say, we're not going to change the research on medicine and women's health in our generation. It's not going to change in our lifetime, but we can change it for future generations. So I am a trustee of a charity called Dove, Charity for Changing Global Health, and it is a women's charity. I'm the only male trustee on that charity because I want the world to be a better place for women, and I run the health part of that charity based upon things like this. Mm-hmm. Somebody has got to start somewhere. So that work is being done, but we know there's a huge way to go. So practically, what can you do now? Well, I want to give you a metaphor of your clinician, if that's okay, to understand this. And the metaphor is that a clinician, a doctor, is an artist. When I go to med school, my experience to med school is different to the next person who goes to med school and their person. So everyone who comes out of med school is not the same. We didn't all learn exactly the same things. It's supposed to be generally standardised, but it's just not. After med school, it's even worse because the rotations that I get in medical specialities, I may never be exposed to women's health. I may never have a rotation in obstetrics and gynecology as part of my training to being a GP. Now I have to hit the books, I have to pass an exam about it, but it doesn't mean to say I've ever examined a woman decently on a proper rotation where people have seen it sustained over a period of time. So I may end up being a GP with very, very, very little education on women's health. Now that doesn't stop me being a good doctor. I can be a good doctor, but I might be terrible at women's health. My point being that your clinicians are all different. And I want you to think of them as artists, and you have to choose your art based upon your preference. If you like one style of art, go for that one. If that really suits you, perfect, go for it. And if this other style of art doesn't suit you at all, and in fact it winds you up, it grates with you, don't choose it. Because you don't have to stay registered at one particular GP practice. You can register at a different practice that is out of your area by applying. You can say, I'd rather not see this clinician, please, I'd like to see this clinician. So you have the right of choice. And at the moment, that's the best tool that I can give you. Please choose and say, this is the one I want, and shop around. If you find somebody who's great at women's health, latch onto them if you like them. Would be my quick fix.
I do that, but unfortunately they end up being absolutely swamped. But going back to why is the pain relief not routinely offered when it should be to women when they're having things like, you know, cervical smears or, you know, different kind of, examinations?
Because people who carry out the procedure don't know that it hurts, or they're not too worried about it hurting
So
too
what
much.
can we do then? What can we do as women, as patients?
Yeah.
And I've worked with deaf women,
Mhm.
and I run as a project, and all my services are free. And I've worked with a deaf society with women, and I had to pay over nearly £500 to get an interpreter to make sure that audience of women was able to access information around gynecological care and menopause.
Okay.
And that's what I had to pay as a tiny, tiny project.
So the question is, how can we improve, as one example, pain relief for women who are having smears? I think there is something about education and awareness and empowering people to ask the question. And I think there's a piece of work that you and I can do together after this to pick that up and solve it for Doncaster. So perhaps if we can cross notes afterwards to pick that up, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, thank you.
We have two questions, two hands that came up. And then I do actually think that seeing how we went through quite a lot, I would like to give the last 5 minutes to you after these questions over, because we talked about education, we talked about other things. So it's your thoughts at the end of that. But there's two questions first. So there's one here.
So as a young person, so kind of on the topic of what you're talking about in a kind of a certain way. So I'm a young person who identifies as transgender. So I was born a female. However, now, as I'm going to my GP, not just for females, but for any young people, I'm finding that, more specifically female people that were born female, I'm going to my doctor with the problem, and I'm being told, "Oh, it's all in your head. You're anxious." And then you're going to use me as an example. I had to attend 8 GP appointments before they finally referred me to cardiology. Cardiology saw me and was like, "Oh my God, yeah, that definitely is a problem." But I was told for those 8 appointments that it was all in my head, that I was making it up, and maybe it's because I was being dramatic, because I'm female, because I was born female, maybe I'm being dramatic. Maybe it's just I'm overwhelmed, maybe I'm anxious. But actually, it's a genuine problem. And my friends who, not just females, but males as well, my friends, they're young people, they're going to doctor's appointments and they're being told, "Are you sure? It's all in your head. Maybe you should do CBT and see if that helps, because maybe it could be all in your head." But actually, there's a lot more people with chronic health conditions that aren't being identified because we're told, "Well, it's all in your head, you're anxious." Why is that? Why is that the first port of call? Like, try CBT, are you overwhelmed, are you anxious? Why is that first port of call rather than investigating?
So the question is, why is anxiety an easy diagnosis for us rather than investigating a patient's problem?
When there's been clear tests like blood tests and ECGs and things that have shown there's a problem, but why is anxiety the first thing that's being identified? Of course I'm anxious, because I'm not being listened to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, the question is, why is anxiety the first port of call for a clinician to diagnose a patient with when there are other markers that it could be something different? So my medical school was University of Sheffield, and their motto is Ars longa vita brevis, which means art is long as life is short. And essentially what that means is that you're never really going to get your head around medicine. It's a really nice way of saying it. Life is too short for you to ever fully understand medicine, and medicine is an art. Medicine isn't science. It's not a case of the answer is this or this. There are a broad spectrum of possible answers, even when something looks abnormal or when something looks normal. So your clinician, your doctor, is not going to get it right all the time. We make mistakes too. And as I said very early on, if every day is an exam for me, and sometimes when I fail and I get it wrong and it's catastrophic, I apologise, because we do get it wrong. About 30% of our workload is mental health. 30% of the patient throughput that we see, and like I said, there's 1.4 million per day in primary care, about 30% of that is mental health. And from pattern recognition then, it's easy to say, well, actually, it's probably going to be mental health, but that's not right. So it's very easy to jump to the assumption of this is probably mental health again because the last 10 were. But we have to question our assumptions. I might have that assumption in my head, but I should look around the problem and say, is this assumption correct? Or is there some other information here that takes me down a different route? And again, if you were my patient, I'd have that chat with you. I'd say, one of the possibilities here is that maybe you're anxious. What do you think? And by what do you think, I'm asking your ICE, your ideas, concerns and expectations.
That would have been that's probably a better way to broach that topic of, oh, well, if there's a possibility that it could be this, it's probably an easy way to broach the topic. I think with me it was more frustrating because it was 8 appointments. 8 separate different appointments where I said, this is still a problem, things are getting worse, and there was clear evidence that things were getting worse. But the same, it wasn't like I think it could possibly be anxiety, but what do you think? Is there anything that you're particularly worried about or anything like that? It was straight, clear and cut. No, you're anxious, it's in your head.
And this is where then, so I'm trying to repeat back what you're saying from the podcast perspective, but if you're having to see a team of people 8 times, or even the same person 8 times, and you're banging your head against the brick wall, maybe that's not the artist for you. Maybe my point again is to shop around and find a different artist, because art is long and life is short.
I get your point.
So we've got another question over here.
So my point is sort of similar in the sense of like being given an easy fix. When it comes to women's health, me and pretty much all of my friends, all of the girls I went to school with, everything, at some point have had to go to the doctors and have been told, oh well, we'll just try the pill. And that is such an issue when it comes to women's health. And me and all of these girls are not going to the same GP. So I'm hearing your point of like, you know, try a different artist, try a different GP, because there will be someone who is big on women's health. But it's not really that practical if we're all going to different clinicians and having similar issues.
It hasn't changed over the years.
Thanks.
We've all been the same.
Yeah, so
We need more training and more awareness on a lot of things, really.
well, the hint that I just gave you, so the point then really is if you're going to your GP with a women's health problem, and what the GP tends to do, even though it's a range of GPs, is they just throw the pill at you and say, here, that might fix it. Something systemically is wrong then. It's not the person, is it? It's not the artist. Because all of the artists are using the same paintbrushes and it ain't working. And this comes back to my point then of medicine and science being based upon men. So part of that is that our paintbrushes are the same. We don't have other tools because all we have as an understanding of women is your hormones are wrong, here's a hormone. And that's how basic our understanding is. And again, this is a really fundamental point. If any of you think that as a doctor, I'm really intelligent up here, I'm really clever, I know all the answers, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but I'm pretty stupid. I'm going to make dumb mistakes. I don't know all of the answers to everything, and I certainly don't know everything about your body, and I never will, because art is long and life is short. What I'm given is the equipment and the tools to do the best that I can at the moment, and if that's based upon a history of understanding men and not women, I'm going to be bad with women. So institutionally, I will hold my hand up and say, institutionally, medicine is not good with women, and I'm sorry. So all I can say is that I'm doing my small part by being a trustee of a charity to try and change that for the generation ahead of us. It's not going to happen in our lifetime, but I think we can all chip away at that over a period of time, and on a practical basis, one-to-one with your doctor, admit, you know, we both know you're not great at female health. Can we work through this together, or can you find me someone who's a bit better, please?
Or what we could do is the 22,000 premenopausal women will all get together, and believe me, they'll change the system if we're all together.
Believe you me, I've had that idea more than on one occasion.
I'll march with you.
We are running out of time. There's got 2 hands up. Do you think we could try and just fit?
Yes, of course we can, but
Yeah.
it's occurred to me that I haven't answered 2 of the questions, and I want to answer them really quickly.
Go on
Remember
then.
that patient we talked about who was in trouble, we were going to signpost them somewhere else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy options. In Doncaster, we've got a same-day health centre.
Yeah.
We've got 111 that they can phone who can also do signposting, or they can go to A&E. And I apologise to all of those colleagues in the same-day health centre, 111 and A&E, because I'm pushing work to you simply because I don't have capacity. That's not my fault, and I'm sorry.
Why wouldn't they go to urgent care, not A&E?
I class them as together because they work in partnership.
I would like to say there's, yeah, they're supposed to. I would also like to say that you might know that there's a separate, there is a lot of people who don't realise that there's an urgent care and that A&E and that they're separate. So that's why you send them to A&E.
I have much more to say, but what I will say is you said that you can't get your head around medicine or something like that, but we can get our heads around patient care, and that is 50% of healthcare. If we improve that, we can improve so much.
So,
It's not just medicine.
I love the term medicine because it's what I fell in love with. You know, ever since I was a small child, I wanted to be a doctor and I wanted to be a medic. But the reality is 90% of illness is due to social problems. So these are called the socio-economic determinants of health. I'm not sure I like that term much. I'd rather just say cause of ill health because that's what it is. And it's about things like housing. It's about things like employment. It's about things like education. It's about things like income, poverty. Let's get rid of the term medicine for a moment and let's talk about society. What we don't have is a healthy society. What we don't have is a healthy world. We have a world that is set up to force everybody to work as hard as they possibly can and work them into the ground. People are going to be poorly.
But we don't have community care anymore.
So what we really need to figure out is how to make society healthier, and then we won't need medicine.
Can I say at this point, James, did you have your hand up? Because I don't know if you actually want to introduce who you are over the fact that this is why I've actually brought you in to say something.
Hello, I'm James Woods. I'm the Chief Executive of Citizens Advice. We recognise for some time that the social determinants of health, like you mentioned, being in debt, having insecure housing, struggling with employment, are factors in healthcare, and they have a dramatic impact on that. So we launched a project in 8 GP surgeries across Doncaster where we were giving people the opportunity, and GPs and clinicians the opportunity to link in with our service, and the results have been astounding in terms of the reduction of repeat appointments for GP surgeries and the social impact. We were able to solve some of these social factors. Do you think as a GP that more of this should be available in GP surgeries across Doncaster and across the country?
Thank you, James. That's brilliant. And I wish we could have got you recorded clearly then, because how I'm going to recite that back is nowhere near as eloquent as you put it. So I mentioned a moment ago that the socio-economic determinants of health account for about 90% of ill health and therefore attendance at hospitals and general practice and whatnot. And James was talking about the schemes that we have here in Doncaster that tie into GP surgeries that help to advise people on the socio-economic determinants of health, how to help with your money, how to help with your housing, how to help with your employment. And thereby tackling those, we can actually help people to be healthier, and that has shown reduced need to access healthcare. So the question is, do we think we should do more of that? I don't think we need to do more of that. I think that should be the foundation of what healthcare is. I said that I love the word medicine because it's what I grew up to want to be, a doctor, but actually I think medicine is what you just described. I think medicine is about creating healthy societies and people understanding how they can improve their education, their housing circumstance, their monetary circumstance, how they can feel more energetic to do more things. That, to me, is medicine. So your scheme is the foundation of making Doncaster a healthier city so that we rely less upon a hospital, we rely less upon GPs. I would love for us to figure out how to work closer together so I can amplify what you do, so I need to do less of what I do.
Right. We have got one question and you have been very patient as this has gone round. So what's your question?
My question is, you know, once my granddad called up and talking about his symptoms, the doctors, and when he told his symptoms, he sent an ambulance because he didn't know he'd having a heart attack. How did that person know what to do?
I'm not sure I understand the question, I'm sorry. You remember that cognitive overload I talked about where your brain's burning out, is it?
He called the doctors, he called like an advice and saying like,
Do you mean like he phoned his GP?
yeah,
And his GP sent an ambulance because they knew he was having a heart attack?
Yeah.
You mean how did they know he was having a heart attack?
yeah.
Okay, right.
Okay, gotcha, that helps, thank you very much. So how, for example, and that's a really great question because it's a wider question about us using phone calls. So we've gone from this system in healthcare of you turn up, you see your doctor or your clinician face to face, and that was the default, to now we're using a lot more phone calls. So how, for example, how on earth can we diagnose a heart attack over the phone? Because it's the bread and butter of what we do. I think of medicine a little bit like a word association game.
Yeah.
You can give me 2 or 3 words, and assuming you use the right combination, I can give you a diagnosis in under 10 seconds. So when you walk into my consultation room and I've got 10 minutes with you, actually for me, and I'm just talking about me, I will usually have a good idea of your diagnosis within the first 30 seconds
Yeah.
because you've used key phrases. I didn't need to see you. I didn't need to examine you. So why do I examine you? Well, medical legally, I don't want you to sue me. So I have to put my hand on you so you don't sue me. And 2, I have to prove medical legally that I've done it. Did I need it? 9 times out of 10, no. So most of medicine is about using words, and that's the same with skin conditions, actually, dermatology. Most of the time you can describe a skin condition, and I don't have to see it to know what it is because you described it well. So if we have a good conversation over the telephone, and that doesn't rely upon you, that relies upon me, getting the words out of you that matter, I can diagnose you extraordinarily fast.
Yeah.
So do I get it right all the time? Absolutely not. But do I keep you safe? Yes. So if I call an ambulance for 10 people, is it always going to be a heart attack? No. But did I keep 10 people safe? Yes. Yeah. We then have time at a later date to double check what the diagnosis was if it wasn't a heart attack. But if I get it wrong for the heart attack, we've only got 1 chance and you die. Yeah. So that call is, can I keep, like I said, my agenda is different to your agenda. My agenda is, can I keep you alive today? So you use a key few words, and I'm going to say, whoa, they're at risk, I'm doing this. No matter what you say, I'm doing this because I need to keep you alive. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think we could go on. I am going to stop it there because we are over time. I think we could go on for double that. And we haven't touched through half of the things that we wanted to go through. We haven't touched as much as we wanted on the accessibility, about carers, about young people and speaking to about mental health and how that works. We've scraped the surface and that's about it, which is unfortunate. What we talked about, if there's anything that you'd like to add in at the end, I'm going to give this. But the question that I did want to end on is, and I don't know the answer to this, but is, do you actually enjoy being a doctor?
Yes, I'm pausing because I want to know how to phrase it to you. I thoroughly enjoy being a doctor, and I couldn't be anything but a doctor. Being a doctor for me is not a job. It's not turning up 9 to 5, getting paid, or 8 till 6:30 and getting paid. It is what I do and who I am. If you meet me outside of this room and you talk to me about guitars, you're going to get a 1-minute conversation. If you meet me outside of this room and say my ankle hurts, I'm going to be chatting to you for a good 45 minutes because I'm going to love it.
You're very good at it as well.
Thank you. Just for the record, she said I'm very good at it. So.
Yeah, but you pay her wages.
Again, just for the record, I pay her wages. Yeah. We can edit that bit. I adore my job. I go home fried, absolutely exhausted, and I'm happy with that, and I love it. And on occasions, I've missed events with my children. I regret that, I hate that, but I adore being a doctor, and sometimes it's just necessary. My family understand that I am married to my job. My family are, I think, accepting of that.
We could ask them.
Yeah. I don't want to put them on the spot. You know, it might turn into a family feud. But if you cut me open, you won't see the NHS, but you will see medicine in there. I couldn't have done anything else. And that's not just because human body is fascinating. That's not the answer. It's because humans are fascinating, and not scientifically. You're all brilliant. You all come in different shapes and sizes, and that's the beauty of it. And no matter when I think I've figured people out, I haven't. And that's incredible. I will go on to learn about humans for the rest of my life and beyond, because art is long and life is short. I will never figure you out, and that's part of the fun about it. You teach me as much as I teach you, and that's brilliant. You can't find another job that does that as far as I'm concerned.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being here. I know I've got a lot out of it. I hope everybody has got a bit better understanding of what doctors are. They're not perfect, they are human. I think we're all going to be walking into doctors' appointments now with our ice. And there's going to be a lot of doctors complaining at us over the fact that Dean gave away the secret. I'd like to thank you, because you have been honest. And maybe we do this again to get the rest of the questions in. Okay, so thank you.
Same time next week. Thank you all very much.